5 days, and then they released him. He finished up his doses at home, and when I called him, he was out maybe 2 days out of the hospital. And I said, "How are you doing?" He said, "Gene, I still got it." I said, "Okay, call your doctor back in Ohio." He called the doctor back, and within a half hour, he was in an ambulance. They were taking him to Columbus, Ohio. And he kept him there for about
We're at
5 days.
just so you know, Jay. I don't know if you saw
He
that.
went on the antiviral injections, and he was the Remdesivir, I think it's REM. Yeah, Remdesivir. And within 3 days, he was symptom-free, and the 4th day they sent him home.
Yeah. So he's never very long.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There we go. Okay, it's 5:15, and we're going to go ahead and call the May meeting of the Board of Aviation Commissioners for the City of Warsaw to order. You should all have received packets electronically and/or in physical condition. And the first things on the agenda would be approval of the minutes from the March 2020 meeting.
And I make a motion to accept the March minutes as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Next, approval of claims. Nick, what do you have for us in particular here?
Not a whole lot. And don't forget to turn your mics on since we're broadcasting this. Make sure the green light's on so everybody can hear you at home. Okay. Speak up a little bit then so everybody can hear. Is everybody else is on? There we go.
I'm good at yelling.
The only thing out of the ordinary, we did have to make a couple oil purchases for aircraft oil for resale that you guys will have to specifically approve $866.40 to CMP Oil. We had in the month of March, we had 2 loads of Jet A totaling $27,813.57. And in the month of April, we had 1 load of Jet A and 1 load of 100 low lead at $29,363.58. And I have to say that fuel prices right now are incredibly low. I started flying out of Warsaw when I was 16 in 2001, and fuel prices are lower now than when I started flying 15, 16 years ago. So gas is very, very cheap right now, which is great. We're seeing some general aviation fly, but not very much as far as the jet traffic still. So it's been pretty quiet, but it's allowing us to get some other projects at the airport going that we have wanted to get going. So other than that, there's not a whole lot else on the claims list right now, unless you guys have a specific question over anything. The only one that you might not recognize, Stock and Field, is now the owner of Big R. So instead of seeing a Big R claim, you'll see a Stock and Field claim. But outside of that, pretty normal couple months.
Any questions for Nick?
All right, well then I'm gonna pass down these 3. Once you guys approve that, you can sign those 3 claims.
I move we accept the claims as presented, especially the $27,813.57 for accident in March, and the $29,363.58 for Accent Aviation in April, and the $866.40 for CNP Oil in April.
I will second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carried. While the claims work their way down the room, the next on the report is Mary, and I gather Mary or somebody from CHA is online with us right now?
There.
Yes, Mary Kirstein is here. I know that you guys probably think that I may have had my baby by now, but I have not. So I am still here. we do have on the line Nathan Lee Hart, who I believe some of you have met possibly through the interview process. And Nathan is going to be kind of filling in for me when this baby does arrive. So
I'm sure it doesn't seem as long to us as it does to
Well.
you, Mary, so.
So I will go ahead and get started. I believe, Nick, that you have given them the engineer's report that I sent over to you.
I did.
Okay, great, just checking. So first with AEP, we have been holding weekly conference calls with them the past month. When everything initially started with COVID, we were kind of having some trouble getting in contact with them and getting a reply. But now we've been able to consistently have weekly meetings with them and really start moving the discussion forward. So they are finalizing their construction pricing, and we do anticipate some pricing back from them here in the next week or so. We've requested that they try to give us that by the middle of May so that we can submit a supplemental grant application to the FAA. They have also provided us the final locations of the new towers, and we have shared that information with the FAA's planner, Gary Wilson, and Gary has requested that we submit that for being air-spaced. So we will submit that this week so that that can all be air-spaced. And that airspace will basically give guidance on exactly how they want those structures to be lit and to be marked. So they will not be obstructions. We have verified that they are below the approach surfaces and the Part 77 surfaces, but due to the FAA's requirements for those types of structures, they will still need to be lit. So then we have also been holding biweekly meetings with Nick, the FAA, and NDOT just to get everyone on the same page and make sure that everyone is up to date with what's going on with AEP. So we have our next meeting for that on Thursday, and yeah, we're moving along. We're trying to, the first thing that we're trying to get from AEP is that construction pricing so that we can submit that grant application. And then after that, the big hurdle that we will be working on will be to get a contract in place with AEP. So any questions about the AEP update or anything that I need to provide clarification on?
One question, Mary, about the airspace analysis. With resubmission of revised locations for towers, do we anticipate that this is going to cause a significant delay, and is it going to take a long time for them to get this done?
No, I've spoken with Gary Wilson, and they've actually submitted this. Ken Ross submitted this last year. These towers have actually been submitted on, I believe this would be the third or fourth time that they've been submitted on. So they are aware of the situation, and that will be submitting it. So I would hope that it would not take very long for them to review. They do say that, you know, it can take 60 to 90 days, but since they have reviewed it previously, I would imagine that it would not take as long.
Okay. Questions? Okay. No questions on EEP. You want to move on to the runway situation?
Yep. So, and I know that we didn't meet in April, but we did receive 90% plans from Nick. So that included plans, cross-sections, specifications, and a cost estimate from NGC. And CHA did a very thorough review of those plans. I think we've provided almost like 150 different comments for NGC on that. So actually this morning we did receive their 100% plans. So we are still in the process of reviewing those, obviously. but those only included plans. We are still waiting on cross-sections and specifications from NGC. So we will be reviewing those documents in the next few days. But in order to get everything submitted and a grant application is submitted to the FAA by the deadline, we will need to bid out those documents. So we are asking that the board approve CHA to advertise those documents pending our review of those 100% plans from Ken.
Okay, and that's the, you have that schedule on your memo right here, correct?
Yes, yes. So, and obviously this is somewhat of a tentative schedule. We're hoping that we'll be receiving the remaining documents from Ken in the next few days. I would say it is somewhat fluid if it takes a little bit longer to receive some of those documents from him, but that is the schedule that we are proposing. So the first advertisement would be May 25th, second June 1st. Then we would have a pre-bid meeting on June 2nd. And I know that Nick and I spoke about at your June meeting, the board giving approval for Jay to sign the grant application once we do open bids. I have spoken to Nick, and he mentioned possibly pushing the board meeting for that month, but I'll let that be a discussion point for the board. But we do anticipate opening those bids June 18th so that we can get all of the grant paperwork to the FAA before the July 1st deadline.
Just to touch on this a little bit, we've got a minimum of 14 days that the bid has to be out to the public to receive bids back. A project of this scope, you typically will give 3 to 4 weeks so that the companies can put together and have a little bit more time to put together that full bid to submit. Mary and I had talked, and it was my fault, I gave her the wrong day. We wrote down June 18. June 19 is a Board of Works meeting, and so it does not have to be the Board of Aviation Commissioners that opens the bid. It just has to be a City of Warsaw public meeting. So the Board of Works could actually open the bids at that public meeting. At our June meeting, if you guys are comfortable with it, you could authorize Jay to sign the grant paperwork. Once we receive the bids, we open them and CHA reviews them. Obviously, we're going to go with the low bid as long as they meet all of the specs that are in the bid document. And then that would just authorize Jay to sign the final grant application because that is due by July 1. So we want to make sure that we don't miss that deadline. And that's because of COVID and us not having our April meeting, it's just made this schedule a little bit weird. So that's the reason for this.
We don't need a motion for that, do we? Do we need a motion for that?
Not at this time. What we need a motion for is to grant CHA the ability to start the advertising process on May 25th, once we receive the final documents from NGC.
Yeah, you need a motion to authorize the bidding pursuant to the outline of the schedule they provided.
I make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carried.
Mary, did I explain all of that correctly? Was there anything else you or Nathan wanted to add?
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think the only other item, Nick, that you and I had spoken about was the pre-application that the FAA has asked for. I know that we don't have it for signature today, but it is just a pre-application that they are asking that we submit based on the cost estimate that Ken provided for us with his 90% review.
Okay. And do we need Jay or do we need a motion for Jay to be able to sign that when it comes through?
I don't believe so, but I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to say that is the case. But in my experience with other airports, they don't require a board action for that pre-application.
Yeah, that just sounds like a warm-up for the real application. I think,
Correct.
So,
Correct,
no, I
correct.
didn't think we do.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Mary?
Alrighty. I just put at the bottom of this Nathan's information if you guys want to email him or call him while I'm gone. So I would anticipate me being back mid to late August, depending upon when she arrives.
Any other questions for Mary? Okay, thank you. Stay well.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Nick?
Fuel usage report.
Yes, sir.
I jokingly told Linda when we were doing this, we should call it the lack of fuel usage report. It's been a pretty quiet couple months, as you guys can see. We are just below half of the fuel sold to date from where we were last year. Obviously, this is due to COVID-19, and so it has been it's been a very slow couple months, and as far as fuel sales are concerned, as you will note, we are up in 100 low lead. General aviation is still flying some. Kind of not many ways you can social distance better than by being in a metal box at 6,000 feet all by yourself. So we do have some guys that are taking some advantage and enjoying some of that leisure time. But the jets are not flying at all. So it's been a pretty slow month on that. One thing that I would like to add in that was not in the agenda that goes along with the fuel usage report, we have been awarded $69,000 through the CARES Act through the FAA. And that funding, I did confirm today, I am allowed to sign it. They've set it up so that airport managers can sign that documentation and turn it in. We do not have to tell the FAA today what we are going to use those funds for, but they were created to help augment and offset the low fuel sales from the last few months. And so my recommendation is that we use them for our day-to-day operating expenses right now. But since we just got it, I thought it would be good to get the board's approval to sign this, turn it in. If you guys are okay with that, we'll do that. And I'll tell them that tentatively, we will probably use it for day-to-day operating expenses from utilities, payroll, that type of thing. If we choose to use it for something else, if we purchase equipment or something, there are additional requirements that we would have to go through, and it will be a much longer process to get that approval from the FAA. It is built strictly for those emergency day-to-day funds to fill in where fuel sales are not. So if you guys are okay with that, I will email our application back to the FAA this evening after the meeting, just so that they've got that filled out and we can get those funds started.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
you wanna move that?
Yeah, I move that we allow Nick to sign that documentation and designate it to be used for the general fund.
Second.
Second, been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carried.
All right. And unless you have specific questions on the income report, as you can guess, with no money coming in, so to speak, right now, it's not looking so good. As of the end of April, we are 41,000 in the red for the year so far, 41,398.90. So we have no fuel sales, and so when that happens, there's just not a lot of money coming in to offset the money going out. So that 69,000 will definitely help to balance that out a little bit.
Mayor, you're not gonna foreclose on the airport or anything because of all this, are you?
I don't anticipate doing that now.
That's good.
I didn't have a mask on so he could see me smiling.
Yeah.
Nick, do we have any of the corporates scheduling? Do we know if they're gonna start opening up and bringing people in?
It's really hit or miss right now. I know that we've had a couple corporates that have come in more for audits of the companies locally that are doing COVID-19 plans. They're bringing in other locations, executives to see what they are doing locally. That's what it has been used for the most. But really, our transient traffic is almost non-existent right now. Unless it's general aviation. We still have some people that are doing general aviation traffic. Most corporations, though, your Zimmer Biomets, your DePue's, your Johnson & Johnson's, they've got basically they've canceled all corporate travel just to try and help mitigate the spread of COVID-19 within their different facilities. Because heaven forbid one of those people would contract it, and then they go and visit a facility, and then they go to another facility, they could potentially spread it to how many hundreds of people. And so most of that type of travel has been canceled, and that's not local, that's nationwide. There was actually a very interesting article in March. One of the biggest concerns was they were still producing jet fuel at the same rate that they normally do, and they had run out of places to put it. They didn't have any storage. And so that, as well as the big oil feud over with Saudi Arabia and Russia, just tanked our fuel prices, which was why we weren't quite at the level where we needed a low lead order, but we went ahead and bought it because it was almost $20,000 a load less than what we had paid for the last time. It was about $27,000, $28,000 for the load the last time, and we paid just over $9,000 for this load. So that's why our cost of gas has dropped to $1.50, $2 a gallon, because it's just substantially cheaper right now to purchase
Beg
that.
pardon, what's that number again?
For fuel?
Yeah,
I think our avgas right now is $3.30 or $3.50 a gallon.
okay.
So, yeah, we're excited. We're hoping that with the nice weather, we can start getting some more people out flying.
How long do you anticipate this slowdown with the corporates?
I think they're going to start coming back slowly in the next month or two. I don't know how much we will see in Warsaw right away. A lot of the industry is saying it's probably going to be next April until the airlines are back at 100%. But there's a real divide and a big split on when corporate travel is going to come back. I think the largest part is going to be when we are seeing some areas where numbers are dropping, and at the airport, my biggest concern is those aircraft coming in, we have no idea where they were an hour before or the day before, and so mitigating locally what we can do. We've got quite a few protocols in place. We normally use a regular nitrile gloves that the guys can use time and time and time again. All of that is on the shelf. We're using single-use masks, single-use gloves. Every time they handle an aircraft, they discard of those gloves, those masks, wash their hands. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff in place just to mitigate their exposure, and then that mitigates our exposure here as a community as well. So corporate-wise, I really think it's going to be July, maybe August before it really starts picking back up. But again, that's today. If we have new news in a week, it could come back much sooner. It could be another 6 months out beyond that. So at this point, it's just kind of a waiting game.
Okay, any questions about income fuel usage? Okay, off to new business, Nick.
All right. First off, I have two things that are not on this agenda. They were on the last month's agenda, and I forgot to bring them forward. I am sad to say that Linda Cease has officially retired full-time. She was retired for 4 whole days before she started back part-time. With everything going on with COVID and some of the other stuff we have going on at the airport, she agreed graciously to come back and help us out part-time through this. We're going to see how everything goes. We may wind up replacing her with a full-time person at a later date. But right now, to bridge this gap and the slow time that we have going on, it just worked out that she was able to come back on a part-time basis, and it made it easier for us not to have to train somebody right now. So if you call out and you don't get Linda when you call, that's why she did officially retire a couple weeks ago. So we'll have a fun retirement party here hopefully in a month or two when a lot of this opens up and you guys can come out and wish her best. Two other things. We are in our last year for the farm cash lease for the airport. Currently, Tom Farms is renting 2 of the 3 parcels that we rent out for cash rent. The third parcel, nobody bid on. the last time, and so we have a memorandum of understanding with a local farmer who is just maintaining that, and then he has the rights to mow that for hay. We have worked with the local farm bureau, and it is not really good soil for farming, but it's perfect for mowing hay, so that's kind of a quid pro quo there. With the cash rent, though, we do have the option to extend our current land lease if the board so elects, or we can advertise and go out to bid on that. The last time this came up, the board did elect to go out to bid, but it is your decision if you would like to extend it one time, so.
And what's Tom Farms willing to do that?
They are willing to extend the lease for another 3 years if we would so choose. I would just have to draw up some paperwork to have them sign at our next, and then you guys could potentially approve that at the next board meeting, or we can just go back out to bid. It's up to you guys.
At the same numbers?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
I'd say we extend it. With crop prices as low as they are and stuff right now, I don't think you're gonna get any better bid.
Normally I'd want to bid it, but I kind of agree with you. This particular crisis we're in right now, let's just keep things going for a little while.
Yeah,
I've
if
talked to
he's
several
willing
farmers
to.
that they're, one farmer I talked to last week he had to sell 40 semi-loads of corn at cost.
Yeah. So I will, as long as they're okay with that, we'll have the city attorney draw up an extension to that land lease, and if they sign everything, we'll present it at the next meeting, and you guys can sign it.
That's fine.
Okay.
An update on John Blosser's hangar. So we had talked about getting appraisals for that a few months ago. I have been having a lot of problem finding an MIA appraiser to appraise that building. And the reason for that, I have since learned, is that is not a real, 20 years ago, that was the standard in the aviation industry to use for appraising a building. Today, that is not what the designation is. There is a government certification called a certified general appraiser, and those are people who have a stamp. They have a number similar to an engineer number where they are licensed to appraise buildings. The MAI appraisers are more of a fraternity than they are a certification body anymore, which is why we've been having such a hard time finding those MAI appraisers. I've spoken with John, and another issue that we came up with is his lease actually did not specify what type of appraiser we have to use. He is fine with a certified general appraiser. If the board is okay with it, per John's lease, the airport would pick one appraiser. John will pick one appraiser. Both of them will submit appraisals to the board. And then if they are within 8%, we can average those, and that is considered fair market value. If they are outside of that 8%, then those two appraisers appoint a third appraisal, and then the high and low numbers are rejected, and the middle number is what is considered fair market value. I have an appraiser that is willing to start this project tomorrow, so if the board approves it tonight, I'll get that going tomorrow and let John know that he can call his own appraiser, and then hopefully we can have those numbers for our next board meeting.
Good.
I move we allow that to happen.
Got it.
Second?
Second, been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carried.
Okay, and the last thing, or I have two more things. We've had some questions about our fueling policy recently. We close the airport Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. We close on Saturdays and Sundays at 6 p.m. And we've had a couple customers and a couple of my staff members. It's not been an issue until the last 6 months what constitutes an after-hour fueling. So if we have and this was the latest situation that, and I would like your guys' input to make this policy. We had an aircraft coming in. They were still in the pattern. They had not yet touched down. It was 6:48 in the evening, and by the time they landed, it was 6:58 because they were quite a ways out when they made their first call in, and there was no way for them to taxi from the runway to the terminal building, shut down the aircraft, and us to start putting fuel in that aircraft by 7 p.m., which is when we close, and our computers switch over to do that after hours at 7 p.m. Now, there's a way that we can override that, but I wanted your input on what we want to consider an after-hour fueling. Currently, we charge that $100 after-hour fueling fee. For jets, it's not an issue. The jets don't have a problem paying that at all. But a general aviation guy who just wants 10 or 15 gallons of avgas, their bill goes from $50 or $60 for that fuel up to $150 or $160 for that same fuel up. And we could potentially scare that general aviation person off. And they might go to Napanee where they have self-serve or something like that. So I'm just looking at the board's direction. How would you like to go with that? If you ask my opinion, my gut feeling is if they're on the ground, even if they're not at the terminal building, that to me is a cost that the airport can absorb, that 15 minutes of overtime that the employee is going to, 15 to 20 minutes of overtime the employee is going to log for that after-hour fueling. But it does come down to 15 to 20 minutes of after-hour fees where we aren't collecting on that either. So we just need a consensus of what you would like us to do. The other thing is if you're not shut down at the ramp, ready for fuel by 7 p.m., then we could have that institute a after-hours charge. So there's a couple ways to look at it. I've called every airport north of Indianapolis, and you can flip a coin, and every airport does it a little different. So
How often do you think that happens?
it happens more often than you think. Most of our local pilots, it's not a huge issue because they can just get fuel the next morning or the next day sometime. This last instance, the guy was a transient pilot who was unfamiliar with northern Indiana, was just doing a cross country, needed gas. And luckily there was another pilot that said, you can go up to Napanee if you don't think that you can make it to Warsaw. And he elected to not even come in and land at Warsaw then. He just went up to Napanee since they have self-serve fuel. So I know that your first reaction is going to be, Nick, get self-serve fuel. We are still working on that, but $50,000 to $75,000 for a self-serve fuel station is about the cheapest we can find it right now, and it'd be 15 to 20 years of fuel sales to pay that off. So
Well,
just
I still don't understand why it's so expensive.
because of the regulations from the fuel companies themselves, it comes down to insurance is what it really comes down to. Because it's a full filter system, you have to have a full filtration system, water detection shut off, so that if moisture gets inside of that fuel farm, that you can that it will shut off and not put water into the aircraft. There's a lot of pretty expensive items that would have to go into that self-serve station.
So what do you think? Would you guys charge the $100 in that scenario that he just gave us?
No,
No.
my feeling is if the employees, even if it's after closing and the employees haven't left, haven't had to be called back, then we shouldn't charge it. If the employees have left or the employee or whatever and has to come back, then we definitely should charge it. That's my feeling.
Okay,
I think that's pretty much a consensus here.
Yeah.
Does that help you?
that's perfect. We'll make it
Okay.
so. Last thing for the meeting tonight, hangar 18G. Jim Oosley is not more than 90 days behind on his rent again. This is the third time in about a year and a half that he has been behind in rent. We do have a waiting list for those hangars of people with aircraft that would like to move to Warsaw. When I inspected that hangar about a month and a half ago, there is no aircraft in it. The aircraft that we knew that Jim had has been sold. It was sold about 4 or 5 months ago. And it's just an empty hangar right now with no airplane and no fuel sales or anything else. My recommendation is that we look into the eviction proceedings for this, just because we aren't getting rent and we're not selling any fuel. And if we've got customers that are willing to both pay rent and buy fuel, I would much rather, have that person as a tenant. So I just needed to bring it to your attention. I did talk to the city attorney. He needs to check a few things with the COVID-19. There's a lot of weird things in place as far as no eviction right now. He was not sure if aircraft hangars were exempt from that or not, since you can't live in a hangar. So he's doing some research for me on that end. I just wanted to feel how the board felt. We've been very lenient the last couple times this has happened, and it's continuing to happen, so.
Well, my opinion is, we've been lenient enough, it's time.
Yeah, we'll leave that up to your guidance as far as I'm concerned, but yeah, if that's the way to proceed, go ahead and
Okay.
proceed that way.
Will do.
Right,
Yeah.
yep.
And that's all I have, unless you guys have any other questions for me.
Anything
I
further?
do.
Yes, sir.
On the 1836 runway, what's the broad scope of that project going to be?
So it is technically a runway rehabilitation project. So we are going to be rehabilitating all of the pavement on that runway. Mary, are you still online? She might have put us on mute.
I am.
Okay. Interrupt me if I'm speaking out of turn or saying something wrong. Basically, we're going
Okay.
in and we can't call it a reconstruct because we're not reconstructing the runway, but it will be a brand-new runway at the end of this. And our goal is to remove as much of that dip out of the north side of the runway as possible. It's not going to be perfectly flat. The earthwork involved with that would be far too expensive. But we are working on raising that up as much as we can to try and level out that dip on the north side.
So is the asphalt being removed, or what?
Mary, do you have the plans?
I mean, on the entire length?
The asphalt, I don't think is being removed. It's being turned into a new base. Is that correct?
It's being pulverized, actually. So what they are doing is they are going to use the existing asphalt, and they're going to crush it so that that will be the base course that the new asphalt pavement section will be placed on.
Does that make sense, Dan?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was curious what the plan was. I
Yeah.
never really heard it keep talking about rehabilitation, but what does that entail? Are we milling it down to the sub base and creating a new sub base? And the answer obviously is yes now.
Yep.
And then are we asphalt paving? Are we concrete paving? Or what are we doing?
Right now, I can't say this officially, but I'm guessing it will probably be asphalt just because the oil prices as low as they are. I don't see how, even if we did a cost of life study on concrete, I don't see how concrete could even compete with asphalt as cheap as it is right now. That being said, it's something that I have talked extensively about with CHA and NGC. We are looking at it. I don't see concrete being a viable option at this time.
Currently, the design is only for 100% only shows for asphalt that Kim provided. He did provide 80% plans for concrete, but the 100% plans are for asphalt only.
Yep.
So what's the new asphalt spec? Is it 2 course, 3 course?
Did you hear that, Mary? What asphalt?
No, I'm sorry. I'm
Dan was
struggling to
asking, I
hear everyone
can email you the
online.
plans, Dan. They have not been finalized, but I can shoot them to you to look through. He was asking, what spec the asphalt was. Is it 2 course, 3 course? What are we looking at?
I would have to go and look at the plans. We actually do not have the final specifications from Ken, so I would go back to the 90% to see that. But it should say. Hold on, I can try and pull it up really fast. You give me one moment.
And while she's looking, if we award the bid this summer, what's the time frame of the expected time frame of the construction, when to begin and end?
That's a hard question to answer right now because the FAA is not giving too much guidance on when funds are going to be released. Our goal would be this fall sometime. but depending on when the funding from the FAA is released for the AIP program, it could be early next spring before the actual construction begins on 1836. Right, Mary?
Yes, yes. So so for the surface, 3/4 inch maximum aggregate size. For the base underneath, we're looking at 1.5 inch max aggregate. Yeah. So to be 5 inches of asphalt total, 2 inches of surface, 3 inches of base course. Does that answer your question, Dan?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Dan, from anybody else on the board? Mayor, do you have anything for us?
All good?
Okay, well, Scoot back, so I want to take the message. I want to say this very clearly, but I'm sure all of you are aware of the activities that our mayor's been involved with AIM and helping cities and local governments throughout the state. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for your efforts. I'm very proud that Warsaw has you working so hard in that role right now, and that you were here doing that. So.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Well, if nothing else, meeting adjourned. Next meeting will be June 9th. Thank you.
Jay, thank you.
You're welcome. You know,
Thanks, everyone.
I'm not nearly nice enough to.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Nathan. Talk to you guys tomorrow.
I'm not nice enough to lie about it. That's